Hi, everybody. I'm going to share an unscheduled webinar with you. This is just part of the little group here that we've put together to talk about 2021, the 2021 Fast Response Group. I want to keep the ideas flowing. I want our thoughts to change. I want to create videos that I have to go back later in a few weeks or a few months and counter, change, refute because that's the kind of year that I'm expecting to have. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a wild year, but I say that in a good way. I mean, given the wildness that we've endured the past 9 months, I'm not sure any of us is ready for wild, but I think wild is what we have coming towards us. And so we need to be ready for that. And I want to talk about this. So I want to reframe the discussion about the future. And by talking a little bit about what I expect it to look like in 2030 when we look back on this time period and what we will have learned from all this and have a better understanding of some of the things that got us where we are that have nothing to do with the pandemic. So 2021, the start of something unimaginable. Things are going to happen to us whether we are ready for them or not, which is generally what a crisis is. Nobody's ready for a crisis. But we've learned something about crisis this year. And I think the significant thing we've learned is that crises are always personal. The first domino for me in the 2020 crisis was in February. It wasn't that, oh my goodness, my industry is in trouble. The first thing I thought was, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. This is going to affect me. And that's what happens. Survival and extending survival to people around us is a rational next step when we collect our thoughts. That's why the flight attendant always says, put your oxygen mask on first and then help others around you. Well, it's a good survival instinct to worry about yourself first, but eventually you will look around, look at others. So surviving a crisis is not the same thing as healing. And a lot of us are waiting for the healing to happen, but the survival has been going on for so long. We've been battling COVID, we've been battling politics, misinformation, and just the real life of all this because everybody around you is dealing with these things. And so the stress and the turmoil and the difficulty around us is just elevated everywhere. And on top of which, not everybody understands what we're going through in our industry because most industries aren't affected to this extent. As a matter of fact, a majority of industries aren't affected like this. Your neighbors are going to work every day. They may be doing it virtually, but they're still doing their job. They're still getting their paycheck. Unless your friends are in the restaurant industry, everybody else who owns a business is probably doing pretty well. And if they do home repairs, landscaping, sell furniture, their businesses are going through the roof because everybody's at home and they're spending tons of money making that better for themselves. So it's like, oh my goodness. But here we are, scraping pennies together to try to get through month to month. It takes a long time to expunge crisis and crisis thinking from your life, but you will do it. And 2021 is going to be the year when we put this all behind us because we're going to be dealing with exciting opportunities and everything's going to feel like it's opening up and lifting us up a little bit. So today, I want to talk about the silver lining in the current crisis. And before I go there, okay, acknowledge your truths, all right? This crisis took away our awesome future and replaced it with another one. And we can mourn that. We need to give it the space that it deserves. It's hard to see the silver lining all this, but there is one. 2020 started at full speed. We were all looking forward to the best year we'd had ever. After 2019, the best year we had had ever. Sales funnels were overflowing. Sales records are being broken. Utilization was an all-time high. We're buying new equipment. But you know what? Here's the reality. Profits kind of sucked. Historically, profits were horrible, and they've been getting worse for several years. And we need to understand why that is if we want to appreciate the upside of this pandemic crisis. We need to learn something. So here's the good news. We changed course at full speed. Okay? We were blowing and going, came to a hard stop, changed direction, and off we went. In less than 6 months, a new business model emerged and hundreds of companies arrived at that model independently. There wasn't a whole lot of collaboration between us about how to build the streaming services model, but we did it. As an industry, we did it and we held on to it. We didn't let other industries take it from us. These are shows, these are events. This is our space. We're going to figure this out. And we went to market and told people we could do this, and we may not have been telling them the truth, but we got in there and we figured it out like we've always done. So going back to March, revenue went down to next to nothing. We squeezed out a little revenue. This is when that change was coming. We started talking about pivoting, talking about alternative models, get buy models, but we also thought this whole pandemic thing would be over by May or June, right? Well, fast forward to July and it's still here and it's getting worse. And by then we're, doing shows in parking lots. We're doing virtual graduations. Everything was very low priced. We were scared to death of it. Customers, thought everything would be cheap because they were comparing it to something that was free to them, which was Zoom, which wasn't as free as they thought it was. And as we took on these projects, we found out how much pre-production was involved, how much it took to do it well. And our confidence to charge more started to grow a little bit, and we started to push back on customers. And then customers started to see the usefulness of this for replacing the thing that they couldn't have, which was the in-person meeting. So as this became more and more and more important to them, they turned to us, and all of a sudden the budgets grew a little bit, and they started asking for bigger stuff. And they started saying, well, hey, we're not spending all this money on, food and beverage and travel. Maybe we can spend more of it on our event, because look at all the people who want to meet, look at all the people who want to pay attendance fees and things like this. And so by fall, September, October, for those that embrace the streaming opportunity, either to be the producer of the event or support those companies that do that, all of a sudden we're breaking even and even making some money, right? And a lot of factors here. One, your overhead has been dramatically reduced because that's what we've been talking about. You had more experience at doing it. You were better at controlling costs, better at not over delivering. Your customers were better educated. In other words, we're making it work. And in 8 months, we launched a new industry, okay? One where the streaming audience is the primary audience and not the oh, by the way audience. And arguably, you're still doing 20% of the business that you used to do. At least it looks like that because it's in support of these streaming events. But it's very, very different. Everything is quite new. And there's a huge but in all of this in terms of, we're thankful for this, but many of us really want to get back to normal, right? We're looking for signs that meetings will happen again. We walk through the warehouse and go, man, this line array PA hasn't been out in 8 months. Oh my God, the sky is falling. I want to help you with this self-talk because we will need that stuff again. It's not going to be nearly as important as it was before because it's a luxury, right? I'm by no means saying that in-person meetings are dead. They're going to come back and they're going to look like they did before, but they're going to fit in differently into business and society in ways that I don't even think we're ready to start to comprehend yet. What I am doing is imploring you to consider that it will be a long while before those big in-person meetings are what's important again. And by the time they are, lots and lots of things will change. Fighting the emergence of the digital meeting is futile. I might even argue that it is self-destructive. And I know many examples of owners and companies that have given up the fight. They said, we can't play in this space. We don't know how to do this. We don't want to do this. We're just going to either wait or we're just going to leave the industry, and that's a shame because there's some great opportunity here. But the image I have on the screen is about burning the ships. And well, this isn't a painting of the Cortez story, because I'm going to tell you the Cortez story, right? Um, uh, Came to the Americas from Spain to find the gold and bring it back to the Queen. Arrived in Central America, um, got on shore, found there were natives there who were going to fight them and repel them, and they were. It wasn't going to be easy. And so Cortez says, well, hey, the only way we're going to be able to do this, the only way I'm going to get these sailors and these soldiers to leave the safety of the shore is to take away their escape route. And so they took everything off the ships, they offloaded everything, they put the ships out into the harbor, and they burned them. And he told the troops, he says, folks, when we conquer this continent, we will rebuild the ships and we will go home, because we have all the resources and all of these people to do that work for us. And that's the only way we're going home. So the metaphor of burning the ships is important right now for letting your team know, and sometimes yourself, that you're serious about your mission. You're going to remove the escape valves, the hiding places for the status quo, the wishful thinking. I'm just going to preserve this thing. We've got those people who say, well, we're just hanging on to this so that we can get back to renting equipment, which is what we really do. COVID-19 has changed our lives, but we can have some control over how it changes our industry, right? And here's my biggest epiphany from all this. The changes we are experiencing have been a long time coming. And COVID-19 was just an accelerator event. As a matter of fact, we've implemented in a matter of months things that would have taken years to learn otherwise, even if we'd said, we're going to do it. Matter of fact, things I've been teaching for 10 years are suddenly manifest as, well, of course, that's the way you would do it. And so I'm excited about that, because I think that, we're going to uplift the industry in the long run, but this is not the way I would have wanted to do it. So for the rest of this presentation, I want to talk about what it is we will look back on and see that we have learned from all of this. So let's skip 10 years ahead. And 10 years is it's hard to imagine 10 years from now. So that's a good time to look ahead to say, what will we be saying when we look back on this era? And what I predict we will say is that we will recognize that, much like the real estate bubble of, 2007, for the 2007 recession, the Great Recession, was caused by overinvestment and overvaluation in real estate. And it was this financial bubble that when it burst, everything cascaded down. And that's what triggered that recession. Well, COVID-19 is the pin that has burst our bubble of the supply demand curve. We have a huge redundancy problem in our industry. Equipment and people are duplicated across competitive companies with a very little differentiation and only seasonal demand. So we're an industry where there's only certain months of the year that we're in demand, and 20 companies exactly like yours in your market do the exact same thing. We're all competing for that same little bit of business, and we have the same equipment and people who the rest of the time are sitting idle. So it's redundancy, it is oversupply. It's mind-boggling when you look at it objectively. And of course, this has been driving prices down for years, and the supply chain is duplicated across large and small companies. It was wasteful, it was irrational, and now there is no demand, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment just sitting in warehouses, not doing anything, with no hope in the next 2 years of them being significantly needed. So as supplies increased and prices dropped, okay, it becomes difficult to make money, right? So businesses try to control gross profit by doing what? They take more things in-house. We hire more full-time staff so we don't have to hire freelancers. We buy more equipment so we don't have to sub-rent, and we just make the problem worse. Talk about kicking the can down the road. Uh, and then we did some other silly things. We manipulated our financials to reclassify costs so that our gross profit looked consistent, so we could pat ourselves on the back saying our job cost was always, we always have 70% gross profit, but then our overhead was fluctuating dramatically, which is not what overhead is supposed to do. So we tricked ourselves into thinking that we were doing a good job. Um, we created a false sense of capacity by overhiring and having too many people on staff. And then when we were really busy, everybody was swamped because we didn't outsource and we couldn't react and we had to turn down good business. And we overstocked rental gear so we don't have to outsource. And then we turned away new business. And this is the heartbreaking one, because those jobs required outsourcing and our gross profit model would not survive outsourcing, right? And we wanted to protect that gross profit. So we tricked ourselves into some pretty wasteful practices. And at the same time, everyone wanted to reach an exit strategy, right? How are you going to finish this all up? What's the point of this business? So decisions to build inventory and leverage depreciation to increase EBITDA, which is a whole nother discussion, but that will increase the company valuation. None of that took into account the consideration that a sudden devaluation of rental assets would be catastrophic, right? We didn't expect a catastrophe, and lo and behold, here is one. So this was all a great plan as long as something didn't break, just like the real estate finance bubble I talked about before. Now, we could have addressed this over time. Owners were starting to understand. I know that my one-on-one conversations with you have been increasingly more intelligent about this topic. Private equity, we've been wondering when our industry was going to roll up again like it did in the 90s, and private equity stuck a toe in here, and then they pulled back out again because of our overcapitalization and our overstaffed model, and consolidating businesses didn't reduce those things. There's not an economy of scale in our business model that was helping. Now, changes were coming. This pandemic has just been the lighter fluid on our open flame. It was the bubble bursting. We know that now in 2030 as we look back on 2020, and we've not made that mistake again. So in 2030, we're going to look back and remember who changed and who didn't. Right now, crises force change, okay, but they also take people down who don't change. So in business, a crisis starts as a tactical problem. Okay, in March, April, it was, oh my goodness, we need to reduce our costs. We need to rein in receivables. We need to move up the planned layoffs. No overtime at all. But soon after those initial tactical reactions, the crises start to become strategic. How long will it last? What will we need to do to survive a longer crisis? Is there an opportunity hiding in there somewhere? And that's when it gets interesting. Your 2030 self is looking at you right now and wondering, are you going to become strategic or not? Okay. Are you still hung up? Why are you still hung up on your tactics? You're asking yourself. So strategy is engineering what you want to happen based on what you think will happen. In order for you to be strategic in this crisis, which is still going on, you need to decide what you think is going to happen. Okay. It doesn't matter what it is. It's going to be wrong, but you've got to make a choice in order to think strategically. Now, give yourself some credit. You changed course at full speed, right? Do you expect another full speed course correction back to the old normal? Or are we on a path that's going to evolve more slowly? Where's it going to go? Is there a reset in our future? Or are we simply on a new timeline? You've got to decide that. And I want to help you with the future. I'm not 100% right, but I have a pretty good track record. So I'm worth considering in your formula. And at the end of the day, it is what you think that matters. Okay. So I'm going to share a few predictions. Back in November, I shared some predictions about the coming year. I'm going to share some bigger predictions, some longer reaching predictions. And I'm going to start off with the one you're really not going to like, but you need to hear. And unrestricted, completely unrestricted live audiences are not going to return until 2023. And I'm saying that on the 4th of December in 2020, right? And that's, yes, I know that there are vaccines being administered this month. I know all these things that are happening. I'm taking all of this into account. This prediction I've had in my world for the past month, I update these things sometimes daily. Unrestricted live audiences will return in 2023 because unrestricted live audience requires a quantifiably safe environment. Quantifiably safe. Attendees must be confident and comfortable with the price of that safety, and the reasonable alternative has to become less attractive. Now, while you fret about all of that, let me tell you, it is absolutely irrelevant what I've just said. The fact that unrestricted live audiences won't be back till 2023 doesn't matter. Okay. My point is, there is no pent up demand. Our audiences have moved on. We need to move on. Okay. This is going to happen so gradually, you won't even notice. One day we'll realize that people are having meetings just because they want to, and that people aren't thinking twice about getting on an airplane or going to a convention center or going to a trade show. That's what an unrestricted live audience is. People don't have to do a cost benefit analysis other than, do I have the money and do I have the time? Okay. Anything else, okay, is going to keep them from attending. And that's what we're dealing with right now. So this 2023 milestone does not change anything about what we do today. It's simply there as a reminder that it doesn't matter. Okay. That's not the point. That is not the goal. The goal is to run a successful, profitable business in the event space. If you're completely married to the idea of renting equipment, then rent equipment to the event space as it is now, not the event space that it was a year ago. Right? Think strategically about this. Here's another prediction. Vertical integration of supply chains is going to dominate the large companies, and it's going to sink most of them. That vertical integration of supply chains is what we've been doing as we built our supply. We own too much equipment. We have too many employees. We don't have a huge shared gig economy in the industry, or big enough gig economy. We all own equipment independently. The big companies have to do this. This is what makes their models. This is going to be part of their strategy. If they find they are outsourcing a lot from a segment or a company, they're going to buy that company and roll that in and keep those costs. And they're going to keep building because they're measuring something different than you and I are measuring as small businesses. And their version of success is different than ours. So ignore what the big 3 and 4 letter named companies are doing, because it is not you. And ultimately, it always ends up sinking them, right? They build them up and then they break them apart. There's a point in time where they will collapse under their own weight. That's just business. It happens really in all industries. Ours is not unique, but I'm not predicting doom and gloom for them. Their version of success is different than our version of success. So vertically integrating the supply chain in a seasonal industry, think about that, is kind of crazy. But it's going to happen because financial investors will think that it makes sense. And I'm here to tell you, for you, it doesn't. Now, that happening is going to benefit the small and mid-sized businesses who are not vertically integrating. Don't worry about the competition. They've never mattered, right? Focus on your ideal customers. How are you going to get them what they need? Be agnostic about where it comes from. Define your partners. Have great relationships. Your customers are going to tell you everything you need to know about how to grow and make money. And honestly, they don't care if you're vertically integrated or not. All they care is, how many yeses am I getting for every dollar that I spend? Okay? And your job is to figure out how to do that for them. Another prediction. the lines, I'm an old guy in this industry, and I remember the very distinct lines between, going back into the 80s, broadcast theater and meetings. There weren't even lines between these because the chasm was so huge. There was nothing about broadcast that touched theater. There was nothing about theater that touched meetings. There's nothing about meetings that touched broadcast. And we were so far apart. The technologies were completely different. Um, and the lines between these industries have been getting smaller and smaller. Um, but in the audience's point of view, they're changing more quickly. And by 2030, the audience will not see any difference between broadcast theater and meetings. They will simply be consuming content, media, theater, entertainment, whatever it is. And what happens behind the scenes is not going to matter to them. It's mattering less and less and less as we watch Hamilton on television in our homes. Now, in 1990, we had multiple event industries, each with its own tiers. So if we just look at the event industry, even those tiers are changing. We had concert touring, we had theatrical, we had industrial corporate events, we had associations and meetings. We had meatball AV. Okay, all the lines between those segments of our industry are starting to change, and they're starting to disappear. Pretty soon, we're going to be one really big industry with a lot of different audiences instead of one audience with a bunch of different industries serving them. And now we're adding in streaming and narrowcasting to this formula. It's just another business. It's the same audience. Okay, so the audience, again, doesn't care what we're doing. So the lines are going to all but vanish, and we can get over that. That's helpful information for us as we're making decisions going forward. It's funny with everything that's going on around us. What do you think's the question I get asked the most? Tom, what's going on in the M&A market? Who cares? Okay. Look, industry consolidation is going to be greatly simplified in the future, right? If you really want to know, as we take on solutions for our customers that require fewer capitalized assets to work well, industry consolidation is going to become much more simplified. And the more inventory that is consolidated in a few specialized businesses, for instance, if we had effective wholesalers in every region and every market, or production rental companies that only do the rental side of the business, the better looking your balance sheet is going to be in the event production space. Okay? The agency model that I talk about doesn't own a lot of equipment. They know where to get it when they need it. And the more like agencies, event production companies operate, the more valuable they become to consolidators. Okay, so consolidating agencies is quick and profitable. Consolidating companies with huge rental asset sheets is a slog, and it's really hard to find people who are interested in that model who don't think that they can change it, which ultimately breaks it. And we've watched that happen. I've watched that happen for 3 decades now. Anytime private equity gets into our rental space and thinks that they have a better formula for how to do it, they end up breaking the company. So, something is going to happen in the M&A market. If you want to be acquired at some point in time, and that's your exit strategy, then build a model that is going to be interesting and attractive to somebody's 1 + 1 = 3 model. Another prediction, let's see. Agencies. Let's talk about agencies a little bit. So what's going to matter in agencies? Look, in the agency model, it's not just about having the gear and the people and knowing how to do a drawing and put together a venue letter and get out there and do the show. It's not just planning. It's not just project management. In the agency model that we are learning about, creative vision is extremely important. Technical intellect is important, which should make you happy. Creative production is important. Management matters, procurement matters, and that's really what I need. If I'm building a small event production agency, um, these are the roles that I need to fill. Okay. I don't need the tactical roles per se, because that's vertical integration. However, there's a point in time when some vertical integration makes sense, makes financial sense, if not strategic sense. So these are the things that are going to matter in the agencies. Now let's bring this all back to, December 2020. What should you be doing now? Based on the things that I'm predicting, and like I said in the webinar last month, stay lean, stay nimble, minimize your overhead, just do it forever. Overhead should always be your enemy. Overhead should always be the thing that you're trying to minimize. Don't take overhead lightly. Use it, make it a tool. Anything that you put into your overhead model, make sure you're getting some sort of return for it. Invest in marketing. You have to keep growing market share. All right. People aren't just going to find you. We've learned nothing is that marketing is really, really important. Word of mouth is not going to help you in this agency model. Referrals are great, okay, but marketing is what's going to fill up your sales funnel. We have a gig economy that we need to build and need to support. It is out there. It's suffering right now. But a gig economy means that you will be infinitely scalable. And so we need a better gig economy out there. You've got to support that gig economy. You've got to price dynamically. You've got to maximize profit. Just this morning, I was ordering jigsaw puzzles, which is kind of our pandemic medicine around this house. And the Ravensburger puzzles are the ones that we like. They're consistently good quality, and enjoy them. And I was noticing how certain puzzles are 2 and 3 times more expensive than others. And it's the same. It's a 1,000-piece puzzle. It's a lovely photograph. It's an interesting subject matter. But why is this one $20 and this one $50? And then I realized, well, because they can. Because this is the themed puzzle that more people want. There's more demand for this puzzle, so the price is higher. And I thought, well, they get that pricing dynamically matters. Why shouldn't you ask more money for something that people want and ask less money for something that fewer people want? Why aren't you willing to take a lower margin on something that's commoditized so that you can charge more for something that is unique and special? So learning how to price dynamically is going to be very important for our industry. And then, of course, focusing on customer needs means that we're going to have to learn how to jump the channel. Our channel is changing. That order of who buys from whom and where you fit in that food chain is evolving. So don't be afraid to exercise your strategy just because it means that you have to jump the channel, blow up your channel, go around your old buyer who no longer has any business to bring you. It's not disloyal. It is just practical. And the fact of the matter is, when channels change, they're usually forever. Very rarely do we go back to that model. So yes, maybe have an honest conversation with your former channel partner who no longer can bring you any business, and leave them on good terms, but look out for number one, go out there and take care of your business. And how do we know that we've reached the future? I mean, how do we know that it's that 2030 vision has started to happen, or that we're really on that track, or that, Tom was making any sense at all in December of 2020? How will we know when the future starts? A couple of things. When we stop using terms like hybrid, virtual, or streaming to describe an event, it's an event. It's defined by its audience, not defined by how we deliver it. And the audience is going to be wherever they want to be. Okay? So an event is an event. That's going to be the big change. And we're not there yet. I can't do it. I still say hybrid event. I still say virtual event. I still say streaming event, remote audiences. It's the audience that's going to determine what it is that we're doing. So Thank you for listening to this. Again, I want a dialogue. If you got comments, you have questions about this, share it here. You know, next month I may post another one of these. It contradicts everything that I just said. And like I said, 2021 is going to be a wild ride, but here's where I'm starting from. Come on the journey with me. Let's figure out how to take care of our businesses. And if you're ready for some help with that, if you're ready for me to work with you one-on-one instead of you slogging through this on your own, just reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about which one of the ways I help folks will work for you. It's never too late to have that conversation. I don't care how long you've been a follower. We can still talk, and I probably have a solution that will help you out. If not for the long term, certainly for the short term, and you owe it to yourself to find out about it. So thanks for being here. Please participate. I've got a lot more videos in here for you to consume and consider and apply them to your business. I look forward to hanging out with you.